Welcome to Hello Therapy, a podcast to help you take charge of your mental health through evidence-based psychological tips and tools straight from the therapy room so that you can live life better. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I'll just check one more time, it's no big deal? Or feeling that overwhelming sense of urgency, like if I don't do this compulsion right now, something terrible might happen. If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In this episode, I'm going to talk you through a few of the tricks OCD uses to keep you stuck in the OCD cycle. And I'm going to help you spot these sneaky tactics and show you how to take back control. I'm Dr. Liz White, a consultant clinical psychologist with over 20 years experience in mental health. So let's dive in. OCD is a master manipulator. Its goal, to pull you into the obsessive compulsive cycle over and over again. But here's the good news. By recognizing its tricks, you can disrupt the cycle and make it much harder for OCD to grab hold of you. And today we're exploring 5 key tricks that OCD uses and how you can counter them. So the first one is the time trick. OCD loves to play with time. It whispers things like, this will only take a second, or just do this one thing real quick and then you can relax. So here's an example. Let's imagine you experience checking OCD. And you're getting ready for bed and you feel the need to check if the door is locked. And this is really common. OCD tells you, just check one more time. It'll take 2 seconds and then you can get to sleep. You think, what's the harm? It's just a quick check. But then you check again and again. And suddenly it's 20 minutes later and you're still stuck. And I've seen countless clients of mine get stuck like this. But what can you do about it? Well, when OCD uses the time trick, pause, slow things right down, remind yourself, even if this compulsion is quick, it's not worth it. Resisting now will save me so much more time later. It's like building a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger your ability to resist these quick traps becomes. Trick number 2 is the urgency trick. OCD thrives on urgency. It says things like, you must act now or something bad will happen. Or if you don't fix this immediately, there will be a terrible consequence. So for example, let's say you're driving and you experience harm OCD. You hit a bump in the road. OCD jumps in and screams, what if you hit someone? You need to turn around right now and check. So even though deep down, you know the bump was just a pothole, the urgency feels overwhelming. You pull over, you retrace your route, and you lose time and peace of mind. So what can you do about the urgency trick? Have you ever misplaced your keys right before leaving the house? I know I've done this loads of times. You frantically search everywhere, growing more stressed by the second. And the more stressed you get, the harder it is to find them. It's like you can't see for looking. So what actually helps in those moments? Slowing down. Taking a deep breath allows you to pause, think logically, and recall where you last had your keys. And why does this work? Well, when we're frantic, our brain's threat system takes over, and that's focused on survival, not logic. So slowing down helps switch off that stress response, letting the rational part of your brain take charge. So when you feel that sense of urgency, stop and label it. Say to yourself, this is the urgency trick. This is just OCD talking. And then you can say, I don't have to act on this thought right now. I can let it be here without responding. And over time, resisting the urge to respond immediately weakens the power of OCD's urgency trick. Moving on to trick number 3, the denial trick. OCD is really good at telling you, this isn't OCD. This time, this thought is real. You really have to pay attention to it or something bad's going to happen. So let's say you're walking past a stranger and you have an intrusive thought like, what if I push them into the road? Instead of recognizing it as an intrusive thought, OCD tells you, no, this isn't OCD. You really might be capable of hurting someone. You need to figure that out. And this can lead to hours of rumination, questioning your character, feeling very upset, distressed, and anxious, and trying to prove to yourself that you're not dangerous. And this is classic harm OCD, and it's really distressing. So what can you do? Well, when you hear that denial voice, pause and step back and remind yourself, this feels urgent and real, because that's what OCD does. OCD is trying to convince me that it's not really OCD, but I don't need to figure this out right now. It's also helpful to have a phrase that you can turn to when denial shows up. So something like, this is just OCD doing its thing. And then once you've done that, refocus your attention to something more helpful to you or more meaningful in that moment. And by labeling these thoughts as OCD, as the denial trick, and not engaging with them, again, you're taking the power out of the trick. Trick number 4 is the what if trick. OCD loves to trap you in endless what if scenarios. It starts with something simple like, what if I didn't turn off the stove? And spirals into catastrophizing. What if the house burns down because of me? The what if trick preys on uncertainty, and it's one hallmark of OCD, although it does show up in lots of other anxiety difficulties, particularly worry and panic. But research shows that intolerance of uncertainty is a key feature of OCD, particularly contamination OCD, and people who experience unacceptable or taboo intrusive thoughts. So, for example, you're leaving the house and you think, what if I didn't lock the door? Even though you remember locking it, OCD convinces you that there's still a chance that you didn't. So you go back to check, and then you check again. And you may even take a picture or maybe even videos of the door so that you can reassure yourself later. So when the what if trick shows up, practice tolerating uncertainty. Say to yourself, I can't be 100% sure, and that is okay. Now, this is going to feel uncomfortable, but often the only way to break the OCD cycle is to tolerate the discomfort, to tolerate the uncertainty, rather than resorting to compulsions. The last trick is trick number 5, the just in case trick. OCD is also great at convincing you to act just in case. It tells you, why not double check? It's better to be safe than sorry. While this logic might seem harmless, it feeds the compulsive cycle and makes the anxiety worse over time. So let's say you're writing an important email and feel the urge to reread it 20 times before hitting send. Just in case you made a mistake, or a really common one is just in case you've put a swear word in it, or perhaps a racial slur or something that's inappropriate. And even after you've checked it 20 times, then you've sent it, it can still whisper, what if you miss something? And it just keeps you stuck in rumination. So when the just in case trick shows up, try and set boundaries. So limit yourself to 1 or 2 checks and then stop. Say to yourself, I've done enough and I'm choosing to move forward. Now, studies have shown that repeated checking actually causes distrust in your memory, which keeps the OCD cycle going. So the more you don't trust your memory, the more you check. And then you're stuck in a really vicious cycle. So in summary, we know that OCD is tricky and it deploys lots of different tricks to try and get you stuck in that OCD cycle. But the first step is being aware of which trick is showing up. And that is an important step towards breaking the OCD cycle. Now, it's not about being perfect. It's about practicing the awareness and building that skill of resisting compulsions over time. I do hope you found this episode helpful. Over on Substack, we have a treat for our paid subscribers this week with a downloadable worksheet that outlines all of the tricks that I've talked about today and the techniques on how to overcome them. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Hello Therapy. If you found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and review. You can get more well-being and mental health tips by joining our email list, and visiting the resources section of our website at harleyclinical.co.uk. The Hello Therapy podcast and the information provided by me, Dr. Liz White, is solely intended for information and educational purposes and does not constitute personalised advice. Please do reach out to your GP or a mental health professional if you need support. Until next time, take care of yourself.